Hello everyone, welcome back to OCD Recovery's YouTube channel. Today I have a video that I've done a couple times, and I do them probably every 3 to 4 months. I think this one's been maybe 4 months, and I title it 10 Things I've Learned About My Journey. Now, I think it's important to do updates of these videos because it goes to show the progression of where someone was a couple years ago versus where they are today. And I've had people that have told me, when I first started watching your videos to watching you now, there's a obvious drastic difference in your presentation, in your delivery, and almost your anxious demeanor and stuff like that. I'm a pretty hyperactive person, but I think it is important to deliver, this information as concise and accurate as I can because, there's a lot of questions in the OCD recovery journey where many of us are like, excuse my language, but what the fuck is going on? So don't forget to subscribe. And here are 10 things I've learned on my journey to date. Number one is everyone's journey is different. Now, many people will fall into this trap no matter where they are in life on anything. It doesn't need to be OCD recovery. It could be their fitness goals. It could be their financial goals. It could be their relationship goals and going on vacations. People have a very bad habit of comparing themselves to other people because they have conditional acceptance about themselves. And we kind of been like, it's just constantly being thrown in our faces on social media and all this stuff. And we tend to forget that social media is just a highlight reel. It's not that social media is inherently bad, and I will be talking more about it, so I'll stop there. But we tend to do this on the OCD recovery journey. We tend to look at people and think, oh, well, this person recovered in X amount of months, or this person recovered in a year. I haven't recovered. It's been 2.5 years. What's going on? And we tend to forget that none of that actually matters. It's all smoke and mirrors. And the only thing that matters is our recovery journey ourselves. And that is really important to talk about. So that is the number one thing I wanted to start it off with. And none of these are in any particular order per se. They're just things that came to my mind when I was thinking about the list. Number two, acceptance isn't a tool. And I'm going to explain what I mean by that. Acceptance, you can argue it back and forth semantically, whether it's a tool or not. But the reason why a lot of people don't develop unconditional self-life and other acceptance throughout their life, and they do make progress, is because it's used in a format that they think they could snap into it, right? They think that they could just snap into this area where they automatically see things. It just isn't how it works. It takes time to see the perspective shifts. It takes time to unwind all those conditional beliefs that we've been using our whole entire lives because innately, humans are quite irrational in our thinking. We're very black and white. We have a lot of overgeneralizations. We don't tend to critically think a whole lot. And to critically think and look at things rationally is a skill and an art, and it actually takes a lot of effort to change these instilled beliefs. Jade's last video, the one where she talks about her recovery journey, wow. I've been promoting that video like crazy because it's just unbelievable to see where she was to where she is now. And she talks about, there's so many doubts along the journey, 2-3 years in, maybe for some people. Is this still working? Am I going to be able to? And, it does take a willingness of faith per se in developing the process of, I'm going to do whatever it takes to try to give myself the best opportunity to view myself, others, in life unconditionally. And that is really important to talk about. So it's not a tool. So when you see things such as, snap into OCD or, snap into, CBT or a crash course in CBT in 10 weeks, it doesn't work like that. And there's a good reason why a lot of people get discouraged because it's thrown at them like, take this course in bright red letters and boom, you'll be recovered. Number three is not everyone will recover with exposures and uncertainty alone. There are people that, might have mild OCD that can throw in some uncertainty and learn some of the tools and kind of a surface level and go along the way. But that's a huge difference between someone like me or Rob or Sophia or Hannah or any of the other moderators, Jade, obviously, who've had multiple different themes in severe chronic OCD, where it's either in the forefront of our mind or in the background 24 hours a day. That's basically what it was like for me on the somatic OCD journey. It was directly in my forefront. So when I say that, I felt like I was looking through a glass, as Rob said, my depersonalization was so bad that when I was speaking to people, I didn't even really see them. I just kind of was like, holy shit. All I can think about is saliva swallowing all day long. So it really does kind of add up like that. There goes Milo. Milo! I'm just going to let him bark in the background. It is what it is. So number 4 is the internal thermometer is usually not mentioned. Now in the last video I talk about, the difference on why we have theme titles, which aren't absolutely necessary, and why we don't want to use the word puro. Because the theme title can give you an insight into what your core fears are based around relationships, say ROCD. What Pure O does is it makes you think that you're different, treatment resistant, and that you have a form of OCD that's purely obsession based, which is not the case. Pure O is really something I think we should step away from completely, because as OCD is OCD is OCD, but still, if you have POCD, knowing that you have POCD can give you the insight maybe into the core belief, where again Pure O doesn't actually do that. Look at Milo's behind me. And but again, the number one compulsion for people that consider themselves Pure O is that they have the internal thermometer. So they walk around all day and they check this internal thermometer and they think that, oh, I'm treatment resistant. It's not. You're just mentally engaging because you're very scared. And as I talk about in many videos, the way to how to bring the internal thermometer down is to actually bring the fear down. So that automatic rumination, if people are telling you you could just automatically bring down rumination X% per day or per week, is not entirely true. You can stop some of the outright rumination where you're just like, I'm going to sit down and think about this and try to analyze. But the automatic one, which is the majority that fires in the background, will fire away until the fear comes down. And that really has some true validity to it. So number 5 and number 6 are pretty much linked. Number 5 is lifestyle changes can be very key for your recovery. So you don't have to be nuts. I'm a little crazy and I really like my routines, but I've had to work a lot at if I don't get my routines. And, I was very strict with myself. Wake up 7 days a week at 5 in the morning, have to go to bed at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night. I'm strict but balanced now. I am that type of a personality. Fortunately for me, I am a go-getter. I just jump right into the fire in many scenarios. And I've gotten better at, if I look stupid at doing something for the first time, it doesn't bother me as much. It makes me feel uncomfortable still, but I've gotten a lot better at accepting myself unconditionally. Now, some of the lifestyle changes that I think are very beneficial for us is, balancing computer games, social media, and stuff like that. Having a decent sleep schedule. You don't have to go crazy with the sleep stuff. I need a weighted blanket. I need a Tempur-Pedic blanket. I need the perfect temperature room. Because there's many different fears that latch to sleep in itself, because perfectionism is really a problem. There's a difference between task perfection and accepting yourself if you never reach that perfection, and then self-perfection. Most people attach the task perfection to the self-perfection, and that's where the irrational beliefs really start to blossom for us and non-sufferers alike. So, it is important to have a routine. It is important to go back to work. Any psychological study, can show you the benefits of having good routines, but what they usually don't look at is those routines do need some flexibility. The best quote I ever heard was from a very intelligent businessman I like, Ivan Meisner, who said, the best business people are people that have set, rigid routines, but also have the flexibility to adapt when things don't go wrong. There's a couple oxymorons in that. I wouldn't say that exactly in that, but there is some serious truth to that. Set routines can be really beneficial for your life, whether it's in, your spiritual, religious, monetary, political, business, relationship, but also the adaptability and the flexibility when things don't seem to go your way. That way you can just, almost go with things on the fly, because life is very unpredictable. Number 6 is very important. It's called diet alone will not change. So there's obviously huge physiologic benefits to changing your diet and eating majority whole foods, but it doesn't need to be crazy. You could still go out and eat pizza from time to time and have cake and cookies and enjoy family. This is something I'm very educated on because of the body dysmorphic stuff I have to deal with. There's a lot of, body dysmorphic, subclinical body dysmorphia, irrational beliefs surrounding image for conditional acceptance and all sorts of stuff like that. And the food can really play into that. I counted my macros for 10 years, which I don't think is inherently bad, but I was using it as a crutch. I might compete in bodybuilding in the future, but I won't do it for a long time until I work a little bit more at, it's not that you can't compete in bodybuilding and accept yourself unconditionally, because you can. It's just there's a level of difficulty to it that most people don't have. But the diet thing really goes into, no sugar. If you eat sugar, you won't recover. And while eating a balanced diet, again, balanced is everything. Same thing, caffeine balanced. You might not be able to do that in the beginning, but it will take some time to develop that balance. But changing your diet alone will more than likely not lead to significant gains in recovery. Just how medication alone takes the edge off, I'm not advising on medication, but it is important to highlight that most chronic sufferers, if not all, who take medication, they still have to work on their cognitive behavioral beliefs and stuff like that. So it's very important. Number 7 is the most important part in all of this. These are all important, but this one means the most to me. Number 7 is anger is unnecessary. Now, anger is a natural, innate human response. Anger is a response to a belief that you have. I use the diabetes one the other way. Increased blood glucose is caused, okay, one of the signs of diabetes, fasting blood glucose, and your A1C are symptoms of poor lifestyles and genetics and hereditary components, whether you have a poor pancreas genetics, because that's where insulin is secreted from and stuff like that. But besides the point, it's not the actual, anger is not the problem per se. It's a problem in a sense, but it's the belief you're holding about either yourself, life, and others. Usually it's life and others. I mean, people definitely get angry because they don't accept themselves unconditionally, because it's difficult to achieve that, but they definitely accept other people very conditionally, and then they get angry. And anger doesn't actually do the things that we think it does. I have to highlight, we're not talking about, dictators, tyranny, severe oppression. We're talking about the main things where people say, well, that person made me mad, and that person made me angry, and that situation made me angry. That situation and person were factors in it as the activating event. Remember, we have the ABCs from REBT and cognitive behavioral therapy. Activating events plus beliefs equal your C, your emotional consequences. Most people think the activating event equals the C, the emotional consequence. So you hear people like, well, just avoid those things and you won't be angry anymore. Well, that's a slippery slope for OCD sufferers, and it's a slippery slope for people in general. So it is important to talk about that. And anger really doesn't get us what we want. I love using this. If I went and spoke to a bunch of gang members in a jail in Guatemala or, MS-13 in El Salvador, and I said to them, hey, why do you think you're here for triple homicide? What did you do to kill these people? And they, retaliation, vengeance, and all this stuff. Vengeance and retaliation has no benefit, almost none. And, again, very rare scenarios, dictatorships and tyranny and all sorts of stuff like that, but where it could be worked in. But, if you look at Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, I'm actually going to be reading a Martin Luther King documentary. I want to educate myself more about his acceptance of others. Love thy enemy. I mean, obviously, amazing. He was murdered, but still all the way up to the end, while all the hardships and tyranny he faced in those time periods, he still worked at unconditionally accepting others, which is a tremendous lesson to be learned. Number 8, social media needs a balance. As someone who has a highly addictive personality, this means a lot for me. Now, in the WhatsApp groups and on the Facebook group and the Instagram and the stuff like that, it will need to be balanced. We're not going to talk about the physiologic things and the neuroscience about what social media is doing to the brain. None of that matters, because that really opens up a gate. It matters, but it doesn't matter in the way that people think it does. We tend to look at something in our life that bothers us, and we think when it really is kind of in the objective reality, as Ayn Rand said, a philosopher, a female philosopher, you have your perception and you have the objective reality of what's actually happening. But because your perception, you pick and choose and you cherry pick pieces of objective reality, and then you heighten that to you think it means much more than it does. So, you can't say all social media and technology is bad. There's been great things. I can't communicate with you right now without social media, without the YouTube channel, without Instagram. But it does need to be balanced for most people. Not everyone needs to balance it, but a lot of people do. The suggestion for me is, check in on what's up, maybe once a day for 10, 15 minutes if you're new, and then kind of break away and use it as sparingly. We always say that. It does need a balance. I have fallen into the trap of using it very compulsively. I like making people laugh. I have some irrational beliefs about that, but it will need to be balanced. The other thing with social media is, and I really like what Gary Vaynerchuk says. It's not, I don't entirely agree with it, but there is some validity to what he said. Social media isn't changing people, it's exposing people for who they are. That seems kind of crass and kind of rude, but there is truth to that. So most people still accepted themselves conditionally without social media. But now we have a social media platform to post highlight reels and stuff like that. Now, you could accept other people for doing that, but you also, again, will need to work at some balance. There's actually, I'm going to do 11 because I've been thinking about this one. I forgot. It was the one I was thinking about driving. So I'm going to put this in at 8.5, 9 3/4, like Harry Potter. So, but I'm going to add this one first. No, man, not everyone is going to understand acceptance. And what do I mean by that? If we didn't have OCD and we didn't have to use these tools to get better, we would have no fucking clue what's going on with this. I didn't know about this 3 years ago, and I thought I was a very rational person. So it's like when my wife we used to do stuff in the beginning, she would say to me, you're weaponizing rational thinking. You're using rational thinking as a tool against me because I don't understand it like you do. And that took me a while. I'm like, holy shit, she's right. So there's some serious truth to that, and that is important to talk about. Not everyone needs to be rational, and just because you're not rational all the time doesn't mean you can't accept yourself. That is a very important point. Number 9 is acceptance doesn't mean agreement. I'm sure everyone has heard me say this 10 times. I always point people in the direction of Kirsty's video because I think it's tremendous. I'll use a good example, a very difficult example. Let's say you accidentally did something and you got into a car accident and your child was harmed. You know, maybe you have harm OCD based around your children. You don't have to like the scenario, but you can accept the scenario that happened. You don't have to like it. Remember, it's not about liking. You don't say, I'm so happy I got into an accident with my son or my daughter or my mother or my father. And maybe they got hurt, but you can, accept that it did happen while being sad, but not leading to chronic anxiety and chronic guilt and shame. Chronic guilt and chronic shame are only present when someone has conditional acceptance of their life, others, and themselves. With unconditional acceptance, you will be sad and maybe, have remorse, but you won't have that chronic guilt and shame that I hear many people talk about, especially related to PTSD and stuff like that, survivor's guilt. That's happening because they have a belief that this should not have ever happened in their lives. I don't think there's no such thing as treatment-resistant any anxiety disorders. GAD, the big 3, GAD, generalized anxiety disorder, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. I think that some of the beliefs are just much harder because maybe the conditioning of the person, but I don't think that someone is inherently treatment resistant. It just might take them 5 years to recover, and we like things done right now. Number 10 is the last one I want to talk about, which I've talked about quite a bit, and how lucky we are to have OCD right now. Before 2010, not many people were covered. We're talking less than probably 20, maybe 10, maybe on one hand. So it was definitely a lonely journey for Rob. We talked about this. Rob's become a great friend of mine, along with many other people in the community. And I've asked him, what was it like? And he just was like, it was lonely. It's when you're doing something for the first time. And I listened to Will Smith talk about how when you become very successful, it's lonely because you're doing things that many other people aren't doing, which you can accept that as unconditional life acceptance. But, if you look at, this is why it's very important to educate yourself on history. Up till about not long, maybe, the Industrial Revolution, let's go back 200 years, most people died young. Most people had terrible hygiene. Most people, if you go back a couple thousand years, most people were killed by like plagues, diseases, murder, war. World War II, 70 million plus people died. And there's still, I've read some stuff where they were saying they thought 6 to 7 million Jews died in World War II in the concentration camps. And some studies say 11. That's another 5 million people. These people went there and just died. This is a crazy thing. That educating yourself about history is perceived wrong in some ways because people are like, well, you're comparing yourself. That's yes and no. You are looking at people's scenarios, but it's also important to do that because you're not comparing your journey to them per se, but you are being grateful for the, where you are in life and what you have. I mean, I have a roof. I have a great job. Rob's given me the opportunity to help people. I've changed dramatically. I'm much more calm. I'm much more rational. I can do things where I live, even when suffering. I can go hiking. I can hang out with friends. I can exercise. I can eat great food. I can send Rob 25 gifts a day, and he hates me for that because I clog up his phone battery. Sorry, Rob. And but I can do many things while suffering, and I have the tools to learn. I can change my perspectives and everything like that over time. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, remember that, it's very hard for people to see things the way we see things because of our experiences. Just like it is if you talk to 25 blind people, they'd be like, oh man, well, I experienced this, my heightened sensations because they had to go through a process of that. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Have a great day.